But the main thing that I want for you as dads is to know that your job is to show that God is beautiful. God is beautiful. He is awesome and incredible. And you need to show that to your children. And so how do you do that? So bigger than any relationship that you have in your family, even though we're talking about young men's, developing a relationship with your children is not your primary relationship. Developing a relationship with your wife is not your primary relationship. Your primary relationship is to develop one with God Himself. Secondarily with your wife. And by the way, if you're having, a lot of men when they have trouble with their marriages, they will turn to their kids and make these relationships that they think, well, they're going to keep for a long time with their children. But the main relationship here on earth that you need to be investing in is your wife, because once your children are raised, your young men, hopefully when they're 20-ish somewhere, they're going to want to be out of your house. They're going to be wanting to get married. They're going to want to have their own careers. They're going to leave you. And so your wife is who's going to be your primary relationship, as we were talking, hopefully for 60 years that you have a marriage with. So I want you to be, as we look at this as dads, oftentimes if we set our goal here, and this is what I want my children to be, all of the things that we miss, we don't ever attain to our goals. So I want you to kind of set your goals in life for being a godly man, maybe higher than you think that you should. Your expectations for yourself higher than you should. And then lead by example. Be what you should be and do what you are expecting your sons to become. So here at HOFCC, we really, work on the role of the fathers in their homes. That is something that we desire to see grow. And it's not that we want to push women down in their roles in the home. With the feminist movement, they've so much have pushed a lot of that to the surface that men have taken a secondary role in their families, in their jobs, and various places like that. They're godly roles that God has called them to do, as we were talking about, being the priest, a provider, and protector in their home. They relegate a lot of those things out, and they move out of those fields. And we're here to try to encourage dads to take on the high calling that God has called you to as fathers. So wherever you go, Dad, that's where your children will be. So if you are kind of relegating the idea of being the priest of your home out to say, they go to church, they go to Sunday school, they have Bible Bee or whatever they do, and I don't need to be involved in that life, then your boys, when they grow up, will follow that same example. They're not going to be involved in those things. The things that you thought you were investing into them will have meant very, very little to them. So Melinda and I actually had discussed the idea of talking about teaching on boys. She'd like to write a book someday with me, like how do we raise the boys that we have? And not to say that they're perfect, but I really enjoy our boys. And it's been a great thing that God has done. And they're great young men. And I think you guys, as the Proverbs talk about, they'll stand with you in the gates. And I feel like I could do that. If I had an issue, I could say, hey, guys, come, let's talk about this. And let's whatever the issue is. And felt confident enough that when I was thinking about writing this, I have a text group that goes with my oldest 6 boys. And I just put on there, hey guys, I'm teaching on Saturday at the men's retreat. Tell me what was good and what things we needed to work on. Having that kind of open relationship and being willing to take whatever response that may be. And so it was good just to be able to have those conversations that goes on there. But anyway, so when you talk about like chapter titles for a book, Dirty Diapers and Little Dudes. I mean, this is where you start with as dads. We don't start as dads like, oh, we're having trouble with a teenager now. Hun, can you start stepping in and doing something about it? That's not the time to begin being a dad. Dads start, and I won't spend a lot of time on this subject, but just, being a dad that's on duty. You're on call all the time. Being a hands-on dad. Be out there, changing diapers. When you change diapers, this seems really silly about in a men's group, but when you change diapers, you're spending time there with your little one, you're eye to eye. Moms get a lot of this advantage, like when they breastfeed and stuff, but this is your chance, Dad, to be able to be eye to eye with your son or your daughter and begin endearing them to who you are. So don't be a hands-off dad at this stage of life. Be hands-on from the very, very beginning is the point in that. And then also just being hands-on around the house as a dad, because being the example, then your children will grow up and do that. So it's been important for Melinda and I that I show an example in our home that, when the groceries need to come in, when we come home, that I'm part of that. When I say, oh, that's kids' work, making meals or washing dishes, folding up laundry, you say, oh, those are all those women's chores. We don't do those things. Now, when you have 6, 7 boys in a row and you don't have any daughters, you say, oh, that's women's work, and so daughters will eventually come. We have a lot of laundry that's going to be dumped on one wife. And that isn't a cool thing, right? And so all of a sudden you realize that, hey, this isn't just women's work. This is everybody's work, Who wore those clothes? Who ate that meal? And so it's time for us as men that we do things that we would consider maybe in our culture or past cultures that, oh, that was just women's work to do. Because I couldn't leave all of that on Melinda. We got 7 men, 8 men in the house, and she can't be expected to just take care of all those things. So being a hands-on dad and showing how to work in the home, and then they grow up and they work. And so some of the benefits in doing those kind of things is now I get some really good meals, not just for my wife, but when I go to my children's homes that are married now, it's like, these guys are good cooks. They're awesome, right? And I went to Micah's house to help him with some, we were going to do some laminate flooring, some construction stuff, what I know how to do. And, I'm on the way, and he says, I got breakfast ready. I already ate, sorry, but thanks. And he was preparing a whole nice breakfast. And then, when it came to lunchtime, he's like, oh yeah, it's lunch, and I expected to get lunch out of the deal, but we come down, he's got enchiladas. It isn't like, here's some sandwich materials, he's got enchiladas made up, right? And then he was disappointed that I didn't stay for dinner. And I'm like, wow, it's like, I get this is a good deal, So teach your kids to work with mom in the kitchen that they can do that kind of cooking. And if you want a good barbecue, just tell Mike, he says, hey, I got this nice pork roast for you, and I'd like to come over sometime, and he'll slow cook that and have a great afternoon with him. But and my other boys do awesome too. So that was just one small example. We don't have time to go through all of them. But anyways, recognizing that dad is a central portion of the home like that. When we look at different cultures that don't have that, like you look at Central America or someplace like that, where dads are not there and they have mistresses and they're out of the house, you see a lot more crime, you see a lot more drugs, dysfunctional families, abuse of all sorts going on in the homes. And so dad is that key vital role there. So don't forget your role as a dad. Point number 1 is dirty diapers, little dudes. Number 2 is training the toddlers. And I'm going to call toddlers like the 3 to 12-year-old. And you say, well, they're not 12, they're not toddlers and 12. But this is the time that they are toddling in their faith, their understanding, not just physically, but they're emotionally and spiritually, mentally. They're trying to figure out life. And they're trying to balance what does life actually look like. And so a big part for us in this area was kind of a sub-point underneath that is scripture memory. So this may be, you say, well, that's a whole family thing, but this was important to us in training and raising our young men. And so have a list of scriptures that you want to go through and eventually cover these scriptures and be able to memorize those. So some of those for us were like, start with something basic, Psalm 1, or you might have the Lord's Prayer, the Model Prayer, Philippians 2, things like that. So when you read through something and you memorize something like Psalm 1, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. It brings forth its fruit in its seasons, whose leaf will not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind, and we'd always have hand motions to go with them, the wind drives away. Like Keaton's already doing it over there, right? So, which the wind drives away, therefore the ungodly will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation, right, of the unrighteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. We put hand motions with those things, right? Yeah. Well, we did like a hammer. We didn't do the guillotine there, buddy. I see a guillotine back there. It's a men's retreat, you can tell. Right? So, but talk about what it means, not just to memorize a scripture like that, but talk about what that scripture means. That, a lifetime of delighting in God's word will produce something, right? And it's producing good fruit and stable roots that are planted by a river of beautiful living water. And so, young men, as you think about having good fruit and stability that's there, we talked a little bit last night about, like, when men go to choose a wife, it's like, she's cute. I'm going to go find out and see if she's got a little more depth than that, right? And but men start with the attractiveness of the eye often. But women are not always so. And so one of the key things that we're talking about is that one, for what women are attracted to men about, are they're not, oh, I got my buff body, right? They're not interested in that as much. The dad bod's okay, probably, right? But they want to know who you are in the inside. Lucky for me, right? So my wife is a beautiful wife. And so, but they're interested in what's on the inside of you more than they are on the outside, and your ability, and shallowness might be their ability to provide and protect and have stability for the home. Stability is a huge thing for women. And so if the scripture is going to teach you how to be stable, if you want to be the man that this beautiful lady is looking for, she's going to want to see some stability in you. So teaching and working through those things all the way from an early age, memorizing those. Or this isn't just for the kids to memorize, but it's for us dads. We memorized Philippians 2, and I'll just do the first 4 verses. But it says, therefore, if there's any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind. Let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. This becomes a great teaching tool in our home, because we're saying, hey, we are to be like-minded. We're not to be split up as a family. We're to be like-minded as a family. We're working in one accord. We have one direction that we're going, one mind. We're not doing things out of selfish ambition. We have something greater than just ourselves that we're looking forward to. We're esteeming others better than ourselves. That's tough sometimes, isn't it? To esteem others better than ourselves. Let each of you look out not for his own interests, but the interests of others. And so using these as teaching opportunities in our family, that when we have stuff that's going wrong, that's my toy, this is that, or so-and-so's working on his project and I'm working on that project. Have them work together and be able to esteem others and be able to lift them up and help them move forward in their, not only their skills, but in their character training and all those kind of things. So probably another sub-point under training the toddlers is the do's and don'ts of devotions. And these are I'm just going to kind of quickly go through some of these things because we just don't really have time. Like John and I were talking, you could have a whole weekend session on this. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through these, and then our discussion time, maybe the points that are interesting to you guys, we can discuss as men. But anyway, the do's and don'ts of devotions. So a do for devotions. Every day, if possible. Multiple times a day, if possible. Make it a point in your home that you are having the scriptures, whether you get to go to work late and do devotions in the morning. If you leave before the kids get up and you do your job, make sure that when you come home that you spend some time either at the dinner table or you have a special time, 8:30 or something in there before the kids go to bed, to spend doing devotions with the kids. And devotions doesn't have to be like, okay, so we're going to sit down and I've got a 3-point message for you. I've been working during my lunch break and we're going to go through this. And no, it doesn't have to be that kind of difficulty that, it's stressing you as a dad to be able to do devotions. You think, oh, I don't have a bachelor's in biblical studies. I don't have, my PhD in in theology. So I don't think that I can't do devotions with the kids. That's why we do Sunday school, right? And it shouldn't be that way. So devotions might look just like we had a children's Bible, and we just read right through the children's Bible, and we talk about, right, Samson and Delilah, or we're at, we were talking about Abigail and Nabal, or whatever. You just work through those, Jesus' miracles, and you read through the Bible, and we read through the Bible countless times, I don't know, half a dozen times or something with the kids. Josiah probably got tired of it because we read when he was a kid, and then, the next one comes along, we read through that again, and when the next one comes along, we read through that again. So pretty soon we've read through it quite a few times, but it's a chance to be able to hit all the major stories of the Bible, be able to talk about them, and talk about them in their level. So take that time to just read through it. It's not like it's a difficult thing to just sit down, it's the children's Bible, and read through those things, spend a little bit of time on it. We don't have to come up with some new theological talking about, what is double predestination. I don't really understand what that is. Like, you're not going to have that question when you get there, right? And but you're not going to be running across big words, like regeneration or something. The kids don't need to go that deep. We just need to be talking about Jesus in their heart, right? And as you get older, yeah, you're going to have some more difficulties. Your children are going to get smart. Your children are going to get smart, and they're saying, Dad, but how does that work right there? It's like, we shouldn't kill, but God just took Ananias and Sapphira. I don't know. It's like, I guess he's God. I don't know. I haven't been willing to then all of a sudden dig into the scriptures and say, okay, so I'm going to have to go and look up. I'm going to have to get a commentary on this or something and help them work through this. And so you're going to develop your skills in being able to teach and lead your home. I remember Greg Harris telling a story about back in the Depression days, and he's talking about homeschooling, but there was this guy that he was a farmer. He had a cow, and when this calf was born, he would pick the calf up and he'd hold it in his arms, and every day when he'd go out and milk the mama, he'd grab the calf, which was 2 or 3 times a day, and then he'd pick the calf up. Presumably the calf gets big, and it gets to be like a full-size cow. And when fair time came around, and it was the Depression, he didn't have money, so he took the cow to the fair, and he would say, hey, 25 cents if you think I can lift the cow up off the ground. No, you can't do it. And slap down there 25 cents, and he'd pick up the cow, and they're like, I can't believe he did that. But he practiced at it every day, several times a day, until he got strong enough that he could do this. And they were amazed that this big bull would just pick him up. They think the bull would just buck, right? And so it's the same thing with our devotions that we're doing in our families, because we're going to, over time, you're going to develop the skill to be able to do what you need to do. You're going to develop the strength to be able to do and answer the hard questions that will come your way later on. And so that's kind of the do's. Just do it and work through it. The don'ts on devotions is, it's not preaching time. You don't have to worry about that. It's not preaching time. Now we're going to cover topics, but some dads think, I have to get down and when I was a kid, my dad gave us lectures. I don't know if your dad did that or not. We get the lecture, and he rarely talked. He didn't spend a lot of time teaching us anything, but when you did something wrong, you got the lecture. And so this isn't time to okay, devotions is when Dad's going to lecture us. It's going to be a sweet time of teaching, so no lecturing. Don't have to preach it. Just live out what the scriptures are doing. And so when you see a difficult scenario in your life, don't wait till it's all past and then come to your family and say, oh man, I was having this really big problem at work, and so I prayed about it, and then there was a resolution, and so I just want to let you know God did this thing, right? So that's great, and that works at the open mic at church or something like that. But when you're family, I want you to live out what you're doing in devotions. And so when you talk about God being our provider, our protector, you talk about God being the one that's sovereign over all things, that he cares about the little details, and we talk about those in devotions. When you have an issue that comes up, before it's resolved, say, hey, I'm dealing with this, and it is a very difficult situation. Let's pray together as a family and then watch God as a family resolve that issue. So we had a time, I don't remember what year it was. It might have been through the 08, 9, 10, economic downturn. Oh God, depression. And so being as a general contractor doing residential remodeling, it gets really slow when people don't have money or the flow of money.
I think it was about 9 months after 2008.
Yeah, so it would be like in 2009 sometime. So a lot of my business actually comes from people that have HELOCs, home equity line of credits. And they're like, so their houses aren't paid off, but they want a deck or a new kitchen, and they're just like, oh, we can just write a check for 30 or 40 or now it's 60 or 80,000 for a kitchen. It's really expensive. And they're willing to do that. They can just write it out of those. But so when the housing prices dropped, the banks went, and they just turned off all of those HELOCs. And so it means that nobody's writing Dave a check. And so I was like out of a lot of work. Most of my work went away. And so the phone hadn't been ringing. I cleaned up most of my jobs. We were probably having a great time fishing or something. I don't know. But we prayed. Just like, Daddy needs work. He needs the phone to ring. He needs people to call him in to come look and bid out new projects and get stuff rolling. And we prayed together as a family. And that morning, after we prayed, or that day, sometime during that day, we had like the phone, three new jobs rang up. And that is just, when your children see that happen, they just go, God is good. God is real. God is awesome. Just like Dad said, we saw him do it in his life. So don't wait until, it's like, oh, well, I just want to let you guys know, Mom and I prayed this morning when, some new jobs would come through, and hey, the phone rang, It's an after the fact thing. I'm like, coincidence, Dad? I don't know. But living out that godly life right in front of their eyes will just really shock you at what God can do there. It makes God so much more beautiful. So wow, what a wonderful, impactful, God is so good kind of moment. Children to be able to see God working in your life. Also, when we're talking about devotions or godly training, in that sense, biblical training, get involved in something like apologetics, some sort of Bible study program, home training program, Bible Bee. There's many programs out there like that. Be involved with some other families and connect up. So don't miss those opportunities. I know that the Burleys are involved with the homeschool group that, they do a lot of these things. If you're not familiar with those, you can ask them about those. Character training. Make a specific list of things in your home that you want to train character-wise into your children and teach those. But the main thing about some of these things is that it's great, we can talk about that, yes, we do that. But when we violate different character things that your children have been known, then there are disciplinary actions that come from those, right? So, character things like lying, right? Is anybody lying? Is that a disciplinary action in your home?
Yes.
Oh, it is? No? Just lie all you want. It's like, tell Mom you cleaned your room, just shove it in the closet, right? No, when you lie to Mom, then it's like, it's time for discipline. So, but everybody thinks discipline differently when you say that word, right? And some people have one extreme, Dad's violently angry, smacking him with his hands, and other people are like, go stand in the corner or something, or whatever, just stand there. Go stand there for 15 minutes, and that's discipline. And there's a lot of things that are in between. And there are some things that are, the Bible talks about using corporal punishment. And so, but you don't want to do that in such a way that, you're angry, violent, bruising, stuff like that. But some stingy swats on the hind end are necessary at times. And but the thing is that you're trying to get a heart change. A heart change is where we're going at. If you do something out of anger, there's no heart change that happens. All you do is enrage your children to be more angry at you. And it can be on the other side, though, too. If your discipline is so light, you can create a rebellious attitude, which is another form of anger. against you in the home. And so you have to have that right balance that's in the middle, that you're getting the heart change you're looking for. So looking for the heart change. And there's many different ways that you can go about disciplining. Disciplining doesn't have to be spankings. It can be, you get some extra chores. We used to keep a list of bowl with a list of things. Mama's just dream list of things to get done, right? It's like, wash the windows or mop the floor, scrub out the toilet, things you might not have time to do on a daily basis, but it's like, okay, just pick one randomly from the top of the fridge there. Even if you have to get a stool to get up there, you can't look in there, just randomly pick one out, and that's Mama's dream job. She got done for the day. So that was a form of discipline. Anyway. So Melinda actually had a chore chart that, I helped her put it together. She found it. I don't know where she came up with it. It's a pretty mainstream chore chart, but we would divide out the days. Each kid, hours, nice grid pattern. We went through 15-minute increments throughout the day. There's those 15-minute increments throughout the day of where they should be, what time they should be up, when breakfast was supposed to be made, when it's finished. When you have 9 children, you have to stay on a regimented schedule or all hell will just break loose, right? Chaos happens in the home. You have to keep now we don't have to be so regimented when we really only have 3 and they're getting a little older. But when you have 9, you have to be a little more regimented on it. But what that does is it encourages, when you have something like that, it encourages, punctuality, which, by the way, young men, you're going to need for your career later on. There's so many homeschool families that I know that they have kids stay up pretty late and they stay up later and the clock starts rolling way over and then school time starts at 10 or noon or 1 o'clock and old people do that. Old people get on a really weird schedule like that. They just stay up and they don't know what time of day it is. And is that really good for the mental clock? No, it isn't. Having a regimented schedule where you stay on schedule, you can get so much more accomplished during the day. So I just encourage you to keep that sort of schedule. So not only does it do punctuality, but there's faithfulness, diligence, different things that go on there. But back to discipline for just a second. Let's see if my boys can remember the end of this statement. But I'd say discipline yourselves so that I don't
have to discipline you.
So discipline yourself so I don't have to discipline you, right? So the point is that you're using that word discipline in 2 different ways, right? So you're disciplining yourself like you have, you're disciplined in your studies versus being disciplined for doing something wrong. And so they're disciplining themselves, making sure that whatever it is that they need to do, they're doing it themselves so that I don't have to do it. They go in and make sure Mom asks you to get the dishes done, you get it done so that I don't have to come in and then make you do it and then you have to do it anyways. Just get it done in the first place. Do what you were asked to do. Character training, our chore charts. We're going to encourage good character, like sharing, kindness, verbal kindness, grateful for each other, grateful for each meal. I'm still even learning that how much it's important to my wife, that just as much as when we do Men's Leadership Institute and we give reply about how the preacher did, my wife wants to have a reply about how the meal was. I don't know if your wives are like that, but she's like, did you enjoy it? I'm like, oh, hey, it was good. Let's go. We're on. We're moving, right? It's like it was sustenance time. But for her, she's like, I spent an hour working on it, right? I spent a lot of time working on it. What did you like about it? She starts to ping me more questions now. And I'm getting smarter. It's like, after the first or second bite, she was watching. Oh, hon. It's like the way you flavored that meat, not like the taste buds, but it's like, that is awesome. But she's actually looking for that. But I also have to be open, and she has to be open to say, you know what, a little too much curry for me. I'm not a big curry fan, but I'm sure that if I'm whatever nationality eats curry, I would love it. But I didn't grow up with curry, so I don't. Curry's like not necessarily my thing. But I will, if you like curry, I'll eat curry with you, and I'm not going to complain about it. But it's not my go-to dish, right? Steak and potatoes, meat, hamburger, French fries, mac and cheese. If you want to know the list, right? But she loves to cook, and so I want her to be able to use her skills and her abilities and her desires, her joys, but she also wants to know, giving a response. So being thankful for like each and every meal. Thankfulness is key. So we're encouraging thankfulness, truthfulness, honesty, all of those kind of things. And so we're not just enforcing these characters, you're to be living them out. You are to be leading by examples as dads. So when you want your kids to be honest, you want them to be truthful, you want them to be thankful, you also should be showing these things in your home. One of the things we did with our boys, when you introduce somebody, especially when they're young, and you say, "Oh, can you meet Mr. Jones?" And they're like, "Come on, no, say hi to Mr. Jones." And they're like, "No, we're going to say hi to Mr. Jones." And we get them to greet the people that we know are safe, right? So we don't greet everybody like this, but when Daddy asks you to greet so-and-so, I want you to greet them. And what they do is that they learn to be able to be young men at an early age and look somebody in the eye and shake their hand and not be shy, be an introvert, those kind of things, but to be able to be more open. Not to say that introverts are wrong, but just to say that we can break through some of these barriers. People that talk too much need to learn to not talk so much, and sometimes people that don't talk enough need to learn. Yeah, got it? Okay, so. But what that is good for is that someday these little ones that are 3 need to know how to, when they're 15 and 25 and 45, to be able to shake the hands of important men and important people around the world and be able to greet them and know how to do that. And they're going to see eye to eye with these people, sit down at a table and be able to do negotiations with the business that you work for, or whatever it is. You don't want them to be able to, yeah, I know we're here to talk about our new product, but so I've got my assistant that's going to talk. That isn't going to sell something at your company, is it? They need to be able to present what they need to do. Apologetics and a few other things like that helps them be able to do those things, be able to stand up in front of a group and speak. I hated speaking as a kid. 8th grade, we had some sort of thing we were supposed to write and do a speech. It's just nerve-wracking, right? And I just it's the worst thing that I wanted to do in my life. I never wanted to do that. And it's still not easy. But starting with Household of Faith, and we needed guys, we share the pulpit among the men. And so it does wonders for you. It's nerve-wracking. You overstudy, you do different things, and finally you get up there, but you get better at it over time. And so I encourage you dads that if you've never got up in front of a group to be able to preach or to share, to find that opportunity. So if you have something that God's been laying on your heart that you're like, I'd like to share this with the whole church, talk to John and say, hey, I've got a message on my heart, or go up to the open mic and share. If you're looking for an opportunity, so that's not where I want to do it, but I'd love to be able to do it at a men's retreat or a men's breakfast or something, talk to me and I'll just prepare a men's breakfast and we'll do a shootout or something to go with it, right? And be able to share. But for your children, your young men, to see you share in front of a group and break through those barriers is going to allow them to be able to share and break through those barriers as an adult themselves and be more the man that God wants them to be. One of the other things that we did was always take our kids on errands. When you go on errands, I'm just running down to the auto parts store. Don't just say I'll be back in 15 or an hour. Grab one of the kids and say, hey, let's go. And as you go, you talk about stuff and you teach them things. And sometimes there's specific things, and sometimes, like with my Gideon right now, he's learning how not to drive. Don't drive like your father. And, no, but he's watching everything that I do, and we get up to an intersection or something, he's like, should you come to a full stop there? That was, it's like, is that a yield sign? You know, like, he's asking questions, right? And it's good, though. It's like, yeah, I should be a good example. How to do this? Yes, full stop, but both ways, like twice. Yeah, check your mirrors, you know, all those things, right? And so you get to teach and train as you go through those things. But somewhere, so I called that the train the toddlers, like the 3 to 12-year-olds. But somewhere about 12 years old, Melinda says, because, we talked about leadership in the homes. Like, Dad he's primarily responsible for certain areas. And so we're primarily responsible in our homes for the teaching and education of our children. But us dads are gone to work, 8-10 hours a day, sometimes 5-6 days a week. And we can't say, oh yeah, I homeschool my children, because I don't, right? I can be in charge and I can talk with Melinda and say, these are the things, let's work through curriculum, we look at things, what's important, how much time do you spend in Bible memory versus doing math and chores, and how much time you spend, errands and whatever, right? So you're responsible as a dad for those things. But somewhere about 12, she's like, with the boys, I don't know about girls, you guys are going to have to talk to somebody else about girls, maybe John when he gets up here later, he's going to talk about, but about 12, 13, she's like, I've had it. You're going to have to take over. And so I need to take on a certain amount of watching closer at all of their math, their writing. When they're little, Mom can do discipline and those things. She's like, I'm not doing the discipline anymore. You're going to have to be there, When Dad gets home, we've all heard that, when Dad gets home, we're going to talk about this, right? And so it becomes my responsibility, right? None of the kids like that. I didn't like that when it was, go to your room till your dad gets home, But, we didn't send them to the room, we didn't banish them. We're still going to get something accomplished, but we're still going to talk about that issue, whatever it was. And it became more and more my responsibility in those areas. She needed me to do a lot of what we call the heavy lifting of the day-to-day stuff, so the discipline training, school, etc. Fourth point, so we talked about, dirty diapers, little dudes, toddler trainings, character training. This one we're calling Canoe with the Crew. Do something together as a family, right? Take time to have fun. And as we have so many homeschooling dads that are here, don't make every vacation a homeschool vacation. Just go have fun with them sometimes. A lot of people, and it's fine, you want to go to Yellowstone and you're going to do geology and some different stuff, and you want to do some unit studies or whatever, and that's fine if that's a specific thing and they got to see that. But also take some other times that you just go to Glacier and you forget about geology for a moment, unless that's what the kid's passionate about, right? Just go and go for a hike, go see the waterfalls or the bears or whatever it is you like, right? Don't get too close to the bears. But things, canoeing with the crew. So do things together, go for family walks, have family projects where you work together. Find opportunities that teach multiple skills. And so I grew up, my dad took me hunting. I'm not going to say he taught me how to hunt, he took me hunting. And so that meant that before we went hunting, I had a 30-30 lever action rifle. It was a short barrel trapper's rifle. It was really cool. I traded it for some tools, and now I wish I never would have done that. But hey, I used the tools to make money to support my family, so it's still a little bit in my brain like, man. But so I had this 30-30, and it's like we get a box of shells, 20 rounds of 30-30 ammunition, and you shoot 5 or 8, and it's like it's on target. Okay, let's go hunt. You got 5 in your chamber, and you got a few extras. And that was hunting skills. That was target practice, because it's like shooting a buck over the hill every time, right? He says if I wanted to throw $20 over the hill, I just throw $20 over the hill. That's what my dad told me. Instead of shooting $20 worth of lead over the hill, we didn't really spend a lot of time in actually developing the skills. So that's why I say he took me hunting, but we didn't actually teach me how to hunt. And so, but I grew up with that, and so, I did the same thing to Josiah. When he was 10, he started walking along with me, and each one of the kids, when it was 10, they'd walk along with me, and at 12, they would start carrying their own firearm, and then but they were every 2 years, so I'd always have another one walking with me while watching the 12-year-old with the firearm. And then pretty soon it shifts over one more. Then I got another 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And you know, now you've got a wide enough swath, you can kind of just go through the woods, just hunting for the animals, right? But it was good. So we learned a lot together, though, and I don't think it was until my kids got actually like 18, 20 that we started getting, you know, a little more savvy about how we hunted. But God had blessed us. God had blessed us. Oh, you know, I don't know how. I was trying to think. You must have been, were you 15 that first year we got those bull elk? Was that, you know, it's like
15, 16, something like that.
not knowing exactly what we were doing, but you know, we'd known there was elk in this area, and we knew that guys had gotten elk there before, and you know, God blessed us with 3 elk, and then we went back and so Micah was 13, he got this 3-point bull elk, and Josiah and I got spikes, and then we went back like 3 more years later, and Micah was 16 then, and I think that's right? And he got a nice 6-point bull.
He was 15 and I was 17.
And Josiah wanted to be right where he had been before, and so he was over there, and the herd of elk ran over that way. They were down below, and he got an elk over there, and I was congratulating Micah on his because we had walkie-talkies and stayed in close. And as we were looking at the 6-point bull elk and trying to figure out what to do, it was kind of on a slope, and there's a bunch of mud down there. But I had remembered from a couple of years earlier when we were there, and I had my spike. I said, I'll take care of the spike. You just go, the herd's down in that spot down over in there. You go find him. So I let him go while I was going to try to dress out the elk. And so this time, I literally looked at him and said, do you remember? I let you go elk hunting. You know, after I was like, it's my turn. He says, I'm going elk hunting. And I was just going to leave him with this 6-point. It's early in the morning. It's daybreak, right? It's the first thing at daybreak. It's like, you know, always come back in a couple hours and help him, right? And literally, I turned right then, and I was going to started to walk down the hill. I'd already put my backpack on, had my gun, and here comes this elk up through the trees. But I couldn't see if it had any horns. You know, you have to shoot some with horns in this season. And I just kept walking. I could never see. It's really dense forest. We call it a scary forest there because it's so dark, so dense. And but that's where the elk were at. And it comes clear up, and it stops behind these trees. And all I can see is just like its chest, but I can't see if it's got any horns. And I'm just looking through my scope and waiting. And I can only hold it up so long. Pretty soon you start to waver all around, and I look up the hill where Micah was standing there, and he's like, and he says, are you going to shoot? And I said, I can't see this guy no horns. It's got horns. So I knew there was only one elk there. He told me he's got horns. And I double lunged this elk, and it just went a little ways, and it died there. And so it was fun. I was cleaning up my elk, and he was taking care of his, and we could see each other from there. But so God gives you these really fun opportunities, but hunting became kind of like our own Boy Scouts. So I don't live in the city. I didn't grow up in the city. It's not necessarily my gig. But so maybe you guys do Boy Scouts. We didn't do Boy Scouts, and I didn't want to travel to Cub Camp or whatever and every week do their thing, and it wasn't on our schedule that we were going to do. But what it did make me do is try to train my boys to have responsibility, have them ready. And this may not seem like a big deal to some of you, some of it may seem like a huge deal, but have them ready psychologically by 12 to be able to carry a high-powered firearm through the woods. And some people out there that are listening to this are like, that guy's crazy. But you know what? That's the law here in Oregon, right? In Alaska, at least, I don't know if they've changed it or not, it was like if you were able to hold the firearm, you were allowed to hunt. Here you have to be at least 12 years old. So when I went up there caribou hunting, it was like, you just see these little kids carrying around rifles. You're like, that makes you just a little nervous. Glad Dad is there. But you know, everybody's like on quads, you know, they call them machines, right? And so they're all in their machines, and these little kids on these little quads with rifles on the front, and they're just going, right? This is part of who they are and their culture and their family, right? But having them ready by the time they're 12 years old to be responsible to use a high-powered hunting rifle. But hunting does a lot of other things. It helps you teach them about navigating in the wilderness, survival skills, sportsmanship, teamwork. don't always think about hunting as being teamwork, but when you have, 6 or 8 of us that go off into the woods, we're working as a team, keeping track of where they're at, how we're gonna go about something. If somebody gets something down, they're not just like, see you later. No, we're all like, let's all go in and get it together. And there's been many a times that we had we have 5 elk down at once in a late afternoon, and it's winter and it gets dark at 4:30. And so, how do we take care of all of those things and we work together as a team? Or a few years ago, we had 3 elk that were down over a big steep hill, and we all worked together as a team to get them back up and out. It's nobody's, you go back to the Philippians 2 that we had, not out of selfish ambition, not for yourself. I've got to go get my hunting done now. I'm going to go find my elk. I'm going to leave you guys. No, it's teamwork. You work together, and you look out for the interests of others and the interest of the entire family at that point, right? So hunting did a lot of those kind of things for us. I'm not saying each of you need to go out and go do hunting. We have just a ton of stories, but some of you guys are going to do this all in a different way, right? So you may be musical in your family, and you're going to set up, a music team, and you're going to have, people that sing and different instruments, and you're going to be able to minister in a way that I'm not ministering. You can go. We did it some when the kids were little, but we go into the old folks' homes, and what's the politically correct term now? Care facilities for older people, and but memory care and some places like that, and be able to cite scripture or play a little bit of music that we have, but you will be able to minister in ways that we weren't able to minister, and in a much better way. You reach out to people that wouldn't necessarily be able to hear that wonderful music. And so use whatever talents God has given you. God just didn't give me those talents. And some of you have heard my music, and you understand why I don't lead worship, right? So use whatever talents God has given you, and especially if they can develop multiple parameters of excellence and skills. So with the music, you're going to be giving away your time, you're going to be doing discipline and practice, right? You're going to have to be at places at specific times, and you can go on and on and on about how it ministers, the words that are there, what you can say afterwards or beforehand, and those kind of things. So other things that we did, try to kind of start to close up quickly here, but motorcycles, trampolines. We didn't have just one trampoline, we had 2 trampolines. Yeah, no nets. Just anything testosterone junkies will like, we started dealing into. And fortunately, we didn't, I don't think, maybe a twisted ankle or something, because you violated, not you, but we, as a family, violated whatever rules, like one person on the trampoline at a time. Well, it's no fun by yourself. Trampolines are a social event, right? Everybody's like, well, we'll all sit around the outside while everybody does a trick right now. And eventually that becomes 2 or 3 people, and it's chaos, and it's a lot of fun. But, we did things like fishing, wrestling. Now, some of you are into wrestling as a sport, and I'm talking about wrestling on your rug, Wrestle your rugrats and get them down on the floor, be willing, to get a rug raspberry, working with them, right? And have fun playing with your boys and letting them build strength and learn technique and be able to, just exert all their effort that they can against you. And that was great until, I don't know, I just let all the kids pile on me and kept, working them down and have a lot of fun with it. And then, I don't know, when we had Jesse was probably 12 or something in there. He started getting to be a pretty big boy, 13, so he had 13, 15, and 17, and they all pile on you. It's like, oh, why don't you guys wrestle for a little while, I'm going to drink of water, so you guys after, when you're done. But be willing to do that. Get down on your knees and go and be willing to, get that rug raspberry with them. Point number 5, loading the ark. Going 2 by 2. That was what we did with our kids. We always sent them 2 by 2 everywhere we went, whether it was camp, we sent them to Summit or Worldview Academy. We did Mission to Mexico. One time I went with them, and another time I didn't. But send them 2 at a time to go on those kind of things. We even had 2 of our boys that, one of them wanted to be a firefighter. The other wasn't so interested, but they joined with. And because firefighters seem like a lot of nice guys, but when they're not at your home or at the side of your car that's had an accident, their mouths and their stories are not always the best. They're not like they're in church anymore. They keep a professional attitude out in the public.
So they're not like construction workers at all.
Construction workers are really nice. You know, actually, that's interesting, Brian. You know, Brian did construction, and he used to that end of things. As doing residential remodeling, I pick who I want as my subcontractors. Now, I have some subs that they, we won't talk about it being Lutherans or anything like that, but they have a mouth on them, and I don't understand that. You know, it's kind of a claim that they are some sort of Christian, but for the most part, they're pretty good. I almost have more trouble with some of my customers sometimes than I do because my subs know that, you know, keeping a professional appearance, and, you know, if they're not professional with it and their mouth is nasty, I don't call them back, right? And so sometimes Gideon, I just came across the guy yesterday that his mouth was, kept saying, I'm sorry, blank, I'm sorry. He's looking at Gideon, I'm sorry. And he's knowing he's not supposed to be saying these things, but his mouth was going. But anyway, so 2x2. Even silly things like just going to Grandma and Grandpa's house, we'd always send them 2x2. But never did we really do sleepovers where they go to some lady's house, because we've even heard of people that was like, oh, we sent our kids 2x2, but then there was still issues that happened, some impropriety and stuff happened, one or both of them, while they were gone away to other people's houses. And so we just don't, sleepovers were not a thing that we did. It was even somewhat rare, like going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Not that we didn't trust them, that was part of our comfort as parents. Doing the 2x2, they developed friendships with their brothers. So the two brothers that did firefighting together, you know, they stuck together, and you know, it makes good friendship. And it also broadens their interests by doing things like that. Because they're doing something that wasn't necessarily their primary interest, but they're also learning what their brothers did, and so it broadens that interest out there. So Dave didn't do everything perfect in everything that he did with the kids growing up, and some of the things that I wish that I'd done better at, because all of our kids that are homeschooling probably have a laptop or a computer or something like that, and it will be in some fashion hooked to the internet. And some of the men that we've had in the church that are, you know, IT guys and stuff like that, they say, oh, we put this and we put this protection and those protections on your computer. Yes, you can do that, and those are good, and they are good deterrents, but they're not foolproof. I haven't found any one of those that are foolproof. There's always a workaround with those. And so your kids are going to go and find some sort of pornography or something like that on the internet. And so I'm not going to talk about different ways that you do that, because I don't want to instill any ideas into anybody, but just to know that that's not a foolproof thing. It's like, oh yeah, so I got Covenant Eyes on my computer, and that's all done. I don't have to think about that anymore. And because that doesn't solve the problem. You still need to be involved as a dad. So keeping your screen pointed in safe directions. Don't leave the kids like, oh, they just have their computer, they close their door, and they, you know, that's where they need it quiet, right? No, the door should remain open. They're going to have to learn how to, or, you know, have them at the dinner table or wherever it is, or a desk space that you can create out in a common area of the home. They're going to have to learn to work with a little bit of noise factor. All of us in our jobs, if you work in a cubicle or something, there's not like your cubicle is perfectly quiet, right? There's people that are milling around and shuffling through, and so they're going to have to learn in those environments. And so help them to learn to have a little noise around, but keep their screens pointed in a safe direction. Do what you can to protect those, and then make some regular checkups with them on purity issues and those kind of things. I didn't do a good enough job of that. I'm trying to do better at that, but still I hadn't done as good as I could at those things. And then dads, deal with your own issues that you have. You know, if you have issues like anger or something like that, deal with those things. I just like to say I was extremely frustrated. It's not anger, right? It's anger, it talks about that in the Bible. Being extremely frustrated is okay, I think. And no, it's like you got to deal with those things and be open with those before your children talk to them. You know, say, Dad lost his cool. You know, I shouldn't have done that. You know, granted, your little mouth was flying or whatever, or, you know, but it still doesn't give me the right to be angry in return or to give you a little pop upside the head, because that's not discipline, by the way, right? You just like, and sometimes we do that just out of fun, but it's not discipline. Like if a child actually needs real discipline, that's not, you know, just a, you know, thump them on the forehead or something and say, that's anger, right? That's lashing out. That's not, you're going to create anger in your own child. You're not going to create in them the character training that you're looking for. So we talked a couple months ago at our family room at church about courtship. Begin early with your children. So this would be point 6. Begin early with your children, you know, talking about spouses. Pray with them and pray for your children's spouses. Pray with them about who their spouse will be. And that can actually happen fairly early. Now, I'm not going to speak to the girls' aspect, but it seems like sometimes girls are a little infatuated with, you know, marriage and things, maybe too much when they're younger, but I'm not going to speak to that because it hasn't been part of my world, but
I think all my daughters have asked to marry me so far.
yeah.
It's like, no.
It's like dad.
Yeah, so, but discuss with your children, you know, what to look for in a life mate. You know, take specific times that you can do that. You know, if you're teaching them how to drive, go on walks, doing the dishes. Talk with your kids about what marriage looks like, what you would be looking for in a spouse. What are the goals of marriage? Why do people even get married, right? That's a big question in our society today, is why even get married? Especially if you can just, you know, marriage is, you know, we talked a little bit about how people change over time. And so if you don't have the husband inputting into his wife's life and changing her for a godly good, you're a non-Christian and your wife is changing in a different direction than the way you like to change. And for guys, you know, maybe she's changing in a different direction than what you were hoping she would change. And so you might be thinking about, as an ungodly person, just going the other way because of those things. But so marriage has become this thing. So well, it's like a 7 or 8 year commitment. You know, you get the 7-year itch and then I'm on, right? And that's why the 2 or 3, 4 marriages, or why even get married? Because then you got to go through all of that, attorneys and stuff, and that's just a lot. We just, you know, we don't need a ring because we're committed, right? And you do all that stuff. So what is the goal of marriage? What is the goal of marriage? And talk through that with your boys. Why are you getting married? And so, and the main goal in getting marriage is that you're going to produce more children that will be godly children. We're going to perpetuate what God wants for us into another godly generation. There's all sorts of benefits that go in between all of that, but God wants us to raise those godly children. And in the process of raising godly children and through marriage, He sanctifies us. Because when we live a single life, and I just think about Dave, and Dave just gets to think about, you know, like how much money can I make for myself, what kind of yummy foods I can eat, what vacations I can go on, what exploits I can do. That's all self-centered, and it's not changing Dave as into a character that's more godly. It's just feeding my own self-interest. So then when you go back to Philippians 2, looking out for the self-interest, the interests of others, not your self-interest, then all of a sudden marriage and children help you become more of a godly person. It strengthens you, and you become a better person. You become a better man through marriage. So talk about the goals. And then last of all, point number 7 says, have an exit plan. Have an exit plan for your young men. We, you know, didn't do this perfectly correctly. Having an exit plan, trying to figure that out. I think it's some of us that are slow learners, right? I like that when Dick says that. Some of us that are slow learners is that we begin to learn over time. And so I needed 6 or 7 of them repetitive before I'm like, oh, I'm getting this, right? Actually, it's 2 or 3, but yeah, I'm a slow learner. But, you know, so we've tried to have, as homeschooling, we put our kids through a program that's called, it's a Summit Charter Schools. And so like at 16, I want them prepared mentally, psychologically, spiritually, to be able to enter into the community college system. and be able to do that. And so community college system here in Oregon means that you're gonna be, meeting up with all sorts of different curriculums that are not good and holy. You're gonna be meeting up with lots of people that are not good and holy. There's gonna be people on the campus that are actually predators looking for your young children to try to turn to be, gay, lesbian lifestyles and all of those kind of things. We found that through like Portland Community College here, that the more that you were in the artsy side of things, the more that stuff was prevalent. The more that you were in the sciences, it wasn't as prevalent. So like, Micah did the aviation, or Jesse was working with the paramedics and different organizations like that through the community college. It wasn't so terrible, but it's still there, and you have to be careful. But so training your men to be men by the time they're 16, to be able to drive their car, get to class, and be responsible for their own textbooks and signing up for the classes and getting all that stuff ready. By 16, they need to be able to do that. So they could finish out their high school year so by the time they're 18 or 19, they could have their AA or their AS degree, their Associates of Art or Associates of Science, because they just, instead of doing high school classes, if you can move as quickly as you can into the 100 level classes, then they can get those out of the way. And our friend Aaron, he was a high school counselor, and his job was to get kids, through their system, get your diploma, and then once you have your diploma, then you can be accepted into a college, and then you can do their thing. And when we told him, he said, "You don't need a diploma. You need a diploma to go to college. You don't need a diploma to go to college. You can just start taking classes. And then once you have classes at Portland Community College or any other community college, you're a transfer student. And you just move right on in." So it's a lot of parents and homeschool parents, they were worried about so I gotta make West Side homeschooling, and I've gotta have all of my, everything crossed out and give them grades and figure out all these things and all this paperwork that goes in behind it. Technically, you don't necessarily have to have that. Every 2 years, you're supposed to take the state test and know where they're at, but you can just start into the system. And so by the time they're 18 or 19, they can have their associates. And then if they want to move on and go to OIT or Oregon State or wherever they like to, they can, if you choose to put your kids into those systems. They're not always good, are they, John, to send your kids to those? They're terrible systems if they're not in the right classwork and with the right people. So have an exit plan, talk about careers, go over budgets. I'm going to close up here really quickly, but just, going through a budget will show your kid that, I need to have a really good paying job in order to pay for all of those things. When you actually expense all of that out, it helps them realize, I cannot just think that I'm just going to walk out the door when I'm 18, I'm going to knock on some business, and they're going to say, sure, come on in, and I'm going to have plenty of money for the rest of my life. That's not going to happen that way. I counseled a young man that was like that. He said, I can get money whenever I want to get money. And he's working nights for closer to minimum wage and has been for years, and has 2 kids and trying to figure out how to get out of the rat run, right? It's very, very hard at that point. So prepare ahead of time for your careers. And a career doesn't have to be, I'm planning to have, I'm gonna work for, high tech, or I'm gonna do this. Careers can be much different than that. And that's something we can talk about during discussion time, but things where people start businesses and are entrepreneurs and do other things are excellent careers. But I suggest that you have a career direction that you're going before you get married. Know what you're doing before you invite a wife, a young lady to come in and be part of your life. Don't be walking aimlessly and think that I'm going to figure that out at some point. Have that figured out. At least a direction. Now, it doesn't always end up that way. I had work when I got married, kind of, and but I didn't necessarily have a career direction. God gave that more to me as time went on, and I don't know if that was the best still, but it's done, right? So, and then set goals for maturity as to when they're ready to be on their own. So, helping them, of course, when they're married, they're going to be out of their house. That's the quick way out of the house, right? But if you're single and want to be out of the house as a young man, helping them figure out, are they making wise decisions, are they being responsible, are they getting work, or they're keeping their schedule, are they spending their money at Dutch Bros or packing a lunch? Those kind of things are important. And then if you have a son that wants to continue to be in your home, I know that one of the dads have taught you, like 18, you're out of the house. Just prepare yourself. As soon as you're 18 or you graduate from high school, then next day you're gone. I don't necessarily like that approach, and so we set parameters for our young men that when they're done with their schooling, what it looks like at that point. And so you as a father need to do that. But just remember, Dad, kind of one of the key things here, if it's not important to you, Dad, then neither will it be to your young man. If it's not important to you, then neither will it be to your child. So whatever you put your importance on, they're going to follow with that. So if you're it's very important for you to look a certain way, they're probably going to tend to be that way. Or maybe even rebel completely the other way. But if it's important for you to have lots of money, to show affluence, they're going to want to try to obtain to that. And not saying that keeping good hygiene and having enough money to provide your family is not, those are good things. We don't want to go overboard on those. But my point is that if the scriptures are not important to you, neither will they be to your children. So showing God to be very important in your life is the key thing for perpetuating the next generation of godly young men. Thank you.